Kevin Gallagher, great to talk to you here at the Santos stand.
Great to be here.
Now, you were sitting this morning right next to regulator Rod Sims, the ACCC chief, would like to see manufacturers paying for gas no more than the net back price of about $9. What do you think of that?
Well, look, I think first of all, do I agree with that? I think over time we will see that price regulated around the net back price because the markets are connected. Rod refers to the net back price sometimes using the daily spot price, which of course goes up and it goes down. And as Andrew Hodge said today, it's more. You should be looking more at the contracted net back price, and I think he was referring to 11% of whatever the Brent oil price as the current sort of contracted net back price.
But Rod Sims was sort of reminding everybody today that a bit like the banking industry with interest rates, that the gas players have been quick to put their prices up when the net back price goes up, but rather slower to bring it down when the price goes down.
Well, most of the gas on the East Coast market is contracted over longer term, so those prices tend to be inflation fixed price inflation related contracts, and so they are fixed, so they don't really move much at all. Whereas the LNG prices are linked to oil price, and they go up and down, and they go up and down very, very quickly. They go up and down daily. Most of the manufacturers don't want that oil price risk exposure. They want fixed prices, and so they want to know what the cost certainty or the price certainty is through the cycle.
In terms of solutions, Kevin, obviously you and the regulator agree that increased supply is one, but interestingly, he didn't seem to think that either the government's intervention mechanism or indeed the building of import LNG facilities would make that much of a difference to price.
Well, look, I think what Rod did say, and I agree with, is that either of those types of mechanisms or outcomes can improve supply. But they're not going to bring cheap gas. And in fact, history tells us government intervention rarely brings costs down on a sustainable basis. And so we've always been saying that this is a matter of cost of supply and supply itself. And so we're pushing and advocating for state governments, particularly onshore, to help us free up more supply. And we're working hard on the cost of supply side of that equation so we can deliver more supply into the market.
Now, crucial to the market would be if your Narrabri project actually got up. What sort of difference could it make to the East Coast gas market?
Because of the very significant cost reductions, development cost reductions that we've been able to deliver over the last few years, we're very excited about the Narrabri gas project. And as I've said repeatedly, Narrabri is 100% committed to the domestic gas market. Santos have made that commitment very publicly, and it can supply up to 50% of New South Wales' future gas needs. So I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of easy to understand, that's going to have a very significant impact on the market if that project gets a go-ahead.
Are you any closer to getting this deal over the line? I mean, you've got now agreements with manufacturers, haven't you?
And that's a reflection really on the fact that we are moving through the approvals process. So we're a kind of very mature stage of the EIS approval process, and so the next step we hope will happen quite soon is that will be handed to the Independent Planning Commission, and then I would be hopeful that we'd be able to get the decision around year end.
Politics obviously has such an important part to play here too. Now, in the last state election, you had the Labor opposition leader, Mr Daly, coming up to Narrabri and saying that nothing like this would go ahead under his watch. He's obviously gone now. Yeah. Are you hoping for an AWU-friendly Labor opposition leader? Because the AWU have been quite important in this, haven't they?
Well, look, I want to work with both sides of politics, and what we find normally is when we sit down and we're able to tell people what we're trying to do, common sense prevails. Unfortunately, on that occasion, that was a bit of a shocker to us. We didn't expect to see that. But we'll wait and see who the new leader is. We'll look to meet with them, and we'll hope to convince them that this project is good for New South Wales. What we do know, though, Ticky, and we've seen it recently, only a couple of weeks ago, is the people in the regions want these projects. And this is a very safe, robust project. We've been doing similar type of projects in Queensland for a number of years safely. And those communities welcome our involvement there also.
Kevin, do you think that one of the reasons that the gas industry has not been able to get its message through thus far, that gas is the transition fuel for the economy now with climate change, is actually because it hasn't been able to demonstrate much lower prices for domestic users?
Look, I think all of that has contributed to where we are today. And so as an industry, and you've heard Zoe call for it this week here at APIA, Zoe from Shell, as an industry we have to work much better and tighter together to get that message across. But we've also got to focus more on those local communities and make sure that they get the value from our investments with local jobs and cheaper gas prices. And so we're very focused on driving down that cost of supply. And I've said it many times, there is no cheaper gas New South Wales can bring in today than the Narrabri gas. And so we're working hard to keep driving that cost of supply down, and I believe if we're able to do that and get the supply to market, we'll deliver lower gas prices.
Rod Sims was also saying that he is worried about manufacturing and that manufacturers could survive at, say, $7 for gas, but at $11 for gas, he really worries that paper manufacturers and glass manufacturers will fall out of the market and then won't come back. Do you share those concerns?
Look, that's a major concern for us. Many of those customers have been with Santos for 20, 30 years in some cases. So we've been working with them over the last few years, trying to get to a position where we can help them see through their tough times. However, as I keep saying, it comes down to new supply. You know, our fields will decline if we're not able to bring new supply on. And so we encourage all governments to lift these moratoria, bring new supply to the market, and help us create the scale in the market so we can drive the cost of supply down and hence gas prices down.
Now, there's been a lot of interest from the media today about Minister Matt Canavan's strongly backing up Angus Taylor on this idea that there will be no looking at any kind of carbon price or NEG. That's completely off the table now. They have a mandate for the quiet Australians, and big business are not part of that group of quiet Australians.
Well, we've set our direction clearly and communicated that to the market over the course of the last year or so. We build a price for carbon into our economics for all investment decisions, and we'll continue to do that.
What do you think of their response, though? Because they really did hit big business head on, including big gas.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it was a bit of a surprise to me, quite frankly, but we've got to plan over the longer term, right? And so until we see bipartisan support for an energy policy, a carbon policy, we've got to plan for all outcomes, and frankly we can see the other side of politics have got a different view on a carbon price today, and so we've got to plan for the longer term. These are 20-year investment decisions.
And what do you think about Conoco's Ryan Lance, who was here, the big boss of Conoco? He says his capital can actually go anywhere, and he's obviously very concerned about these uncertain conditions at the moment.
Yeah, well, look, I think certainty is absolutely critical to continue to encourage investment into Australia. But I also say too, when we're asking for lower domestic gas prices, we've got to be cognizant of all the new taxes, royalties, all of these changes and uncertainties of business, because that does not help bring the price of gas down either.
And what about this idea of zero emissions, which has re-emerged in Australia? Is that going to come over east?
Well, it sounds pretty extreme to me, and again, I don't think we can have individual states setting these individual policies. You know, we're looking for bipartisan, sort of nationwide policies that we can plan on, and we can work with that.
I'm interested in the renewable story for the gas industry and the idea that the gas industry is using renewables for some of their energy needs and could actually free up some people say about 10% of the gas supply.
Well, look, renewables do work in certain parts of Australia most of the time, certainly when it's sunny anyway. And so we'll be looking, and we're implementing projects all across the portfolio.
Cooper.
Yeah, so in the Cooper Basin to provide power using solar and battery technology, so we're not burning gas to deliver that power to our facilities. That then frees up that gas to put back into the market. So we're continuing with those projects. We're spending around $50 million this year alone on renewables and emission reduction projects, and we'll continue to do that to free up more gas and obviously to reduce our own emissions.
And Kevin, what about the morale here today at APIA?
Oh, look, it seems quite positive, I think, and I've felt that over the last 2 or 3 days. Look, there's a lot of new projects, new growth coming through across the industry around Australia, which is very exciting. However, I think there's a recognition that we have some major challenges in front of us.
Kevin Gallagher, it's great to talk with you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tikki. Thank you.